Hey, welcome to another podcast of Raining Ducks. And Jeff Morgan here, along with sweet Jerry Harris to my right and Brandon Haynes
sweet
to
Jerry
the
Harris.
left. Jerry deserves that one.
I got a new nickname. Cool.
That's right, Sweet Jer. That's what we're going to call him. And hey, I want to thank our sponsors of the podcast, Capital Nissan, right down there on Cherry and the Parkway, as well as Advantage Heating, Air, and Electrical, and GA at Home and Green Acres Landscape. Appreciate those guys for their support of this podcast, and a lot of fun. We haven't been on, didn't go on last week just because we had a bye week, but the Ducks took care of business down at Research Stadium against the Beavs, and the first half. Guys, I was still a little suspect. I didn't know what was happening there. The Beavers looked pretty good, and then all of a sudden, second half, Dylan Gabriel took that one to the house.
It was the first drive that Oregon State had that was kind of like, gosh darn it, here we go, same old thing, because we went down and just looked really good on offense. We've looked good on offense. Took it right down the field, scored, but then they just kept nibbling and nibbling at us. And the ball control that they had, I was just looking at the stats on that. They held the ball for 33 minutes, and most of that was in the first half. It seemed like they just kept churning out first downs. That's what was killing me. It's like we just couldn't get that stop. It looked like we were playing good. We were in position. The Hankerson, their running back, that little spin move that he did, former Colorado guy transfer. But it was interesting. It was it was a little scary.
Shades of the last time we played up there in Corvallis, where you just couldn't stop the run. What they have, like 35 yards of passing that entire game, and it was just like another run, and another run. And it didn't look that bad, but yeah.
They brought out all the stops. I mean, if you look at their playbook and what they ran, they threw everything at the Ducks, and it worked for a half. And second half, they came out and they couldn't do a thing. They had two goose eggs, third and fourth quarters, and Ducks just took it to them. They finally looked like the Ducks team that we were expecting to see from right out of the gate. But I mean, let's be honest. I mean, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get your mojo, to get, okay, the offensive line has been an issue, and I thought they looked phenomenal.
Yes.
Yeah.
0 sacks. What was it? There's 3 penalties all game. I think only one of those was on the offensive line.
Yeah.
Again, looking at the offensive unit, finally got the offensive line that we were looking for, right? Josh Connerly looked phenomenal, was moving out in space. They protected Dylan, and Dylan moved a lot better in the backfield too. That pass to Trayshawn Holden, I don't know how far it was, 30 yards or whatever, a touchdown pass, and it looked like he was going to dump it off to Jordan James on the side, and then he was getting a little bit of pressure, and he passed on that, and his footwork looked better. He moved just a little to his right. Trayshawn threw his hand up in the air and just bam, threw a dart in there. I mean, I thought it was going to the other guy. I was so surprised when it was there like that.
Yeah, that's the one at the back of the end zone where he great body control by Holden to keep himself inbounds and get the touchdown there. And yeah, I thought he looked great too. And what was he? He was like 18 of 18. He hadn't missed a pass.
At one point in time, it ended up 20 as 24 for the game.
Yeah. And it was like, okay, well, this is the Duck offense that we were expecting. This is, what we were sold in the offseason, and they showed up. And I think it's because they finally got 5 offensive linemen there playing together and not rotating in and out at different positions. I mean, you had obviously Connerly and Johnny Cornelius are both pretty entrenched at the tackle position, but you put Poncho back at center, and you put Struther over at left guard and Marcus Harper at right guard, and let them play together and kind of learn each other's body language and movements and stuff like that. And I think it really benefited the Ducks well.
That looked far superior to having Pickard in there.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about Bedford?
I heard he tweaked his knee again this week in practice, and so his availability for this weekend might be up in the air, but the other kid that they're having, he's uninjured as Dave Luley, and I think he's getting a lot closer to being back in, and I think he's one of the backups that they're really counting on to be in there this year.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a little bit of depth on the offensive line so the guys aren't having to do this like continuously all game long, because you get worn out. So it's good to rotate guys in and out and get that consistency going. But I think that we have to take that the fact that this is the Beavs. Okay, so we throttled the Beavs, and the Beavs played Purdue at home this past Saturday, and they beat them. I mean, they look good, but again, it's Purdue, and
Right.
Purdue is not very good this year. They got throttled the week before at home versus Notre Dame. What was that thing, 68-7 or something like that?
66-7. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, by the time you get to that score, it just doesn't even matter anymore.
Exactly.
But you got to take that opponent with a grain of salt. The Ducks did what they needed to do finally, because all the top 10 teams, they're blowing out people, and the Ducks have to continue to blow out teams. And so we need to look for Dylan to keep being comfortable in the pocket, being able to have that footwork, Jerry, to be able to continue to make those throws and opening up the
Right.
running game. So everything is consistent. Everything goes with the flow. So I'm looking for that to happen against UCLA coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, he looks so much more comfortable, and even in that, this could be the offensive line too. You didn't have any jailbreaks. You didn't have guys running free at him all the
Right.
time. But the way he was moving and avoiding, the main pressure, the run that he had, I mean, he had a 60-yard run, right? Just
Right.
took it off the left tackle and just gone. And he had some wheels too. I was like, oh, he's gonna get caught. I'm like, oh, maybe he isn't.
Well, and I'm thinking that maybe they took the shackles off of Gabriel and said, "Run." That's always been part of
I
your
think there's
game.
a comfort zone there. I think there's also the fact that we gave him time. I remember there was one time when the announcers were saying, "Oh, you give a guy 8 seconds, he's going to find somebody." I don't think it was 8 seconds, but sheesh, that's a lot of time.
It is a lot of time. Yeah.
Well, I have to give myself some kudos. I don't normally do this, but I mean, we were watching the game together, and before Dylan made that run, I have to say, I go to Brandon. I'm like, you know what? We need to have Dylan run the football. We got to spread these guys out, and he needs to hit a seam. And lo and behold, there he went. So I don't know if there's a premonition, or if Lanning's like he's got a video on me.
Well, you sure impressed the guys sitting next to us. They're like, "Wow, can you
It was-
call another
it
one?"
was pretty funny. He's doing this, Yeah, there he goes. But yeah, that was
He
pretty
doesn't
funny.
do sports radio for nothing. He knows a thing or two, huh?
Because I've seen a thing or two.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. I might get sued, but I can't pull that stuff out. No, but I'm looking for the Ducks to really continue rolling here. I do. I love the fact that the offensive line is finally starting to gel. At least it looks that way. Defensively, I think we're playing solid. I think, if somebody's going to throw out all the stops, we're gaining experience, because again, we got a lot of new guys on defense, and we've had some injuries. And Bossa, is he still injured right now?
He's dinged up.
Yeah, so he's dinged. We got some guys dinged up, but you're going to get
Betcher's
that.
playing so darn good, though. It's
Yeah,
going to be tough for him to retake that position.
We've
Man,
got some
he was
hosses.
all over the field.
Yeah, and his pass defense as a linebacker looks like it's improved from last year to this year, where he's not such a liability. He's always been a great run defender, but last year it was kind of like, you don't really want him in there for passing downs, but he actually played pretty well this week. I think he had a couple pass breakups as well.
I think it all comes with experience. I mean, the more you play, the better you're going to get, the more you get used to the speed of the game, because that is huge, especially when you're coming off of, the break,
Right.
and you're playing not as good a teams, not as good a competition. This next week, UCLA is going to be faster. UCLA is going to be better.
Yeah.
They played LSU extremely tough this past weekend, and it was tied, 17-all at the half, and then LSU just put down the gauntlet. I think LSU's deep, and I don't think UCLA is. And so I think that's what took place in the second half down there in what do they call that place? Death Valley? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at one point, UCLA was up 17-10, and that's when I turned it on. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is happening to UCLA here,
Right.
taking on LSU? And then LSU scored right then. And I'm like, okay, still 17 all at the half, and I think they ended up losing 34-17.
They did.
But Braden Swinson, former Duck for LSU. Did you see him? He was all over the field, had
Yeah.
several tackles for losses. I find myself watching a lot of these former Ducks, because our recruiting has improved so much, and a lot of these guys are looking for greener pastures as they see their playing time potentially dwindling and stuff. And I've seen a lot of guys for other teams. And I was talking to my brother, and he mentioned a text to me. He says, Hey, do you find yourself watching some of these old Pac-12 teams and kind of rooting for them? And I was thinking, well, heck yeah, I do. Utah, Cal. Cal's played some pretty good games. Cal should have beat Florida State. UCLA, I didn't expect them to be good this year, but they and they're in our conference, so it's good for them to be down for us for next week especially. But I didn't realize I had such an inferiority complex with the Pac-12, and I think that's what it comes from now. I'm thinking, man, I still want that recognition for those old guys. Utah looks like they're going to be. I mean, without Cam Rising last week, beating Oklahoma State at Oklahoma State.
That was a statement right there for those guys. That's a big win on the road.
Yes. Shoot.
And it was a big loss in my college pick'em too.
Yeah,
me too.
It was always that.
Oh no, wait! I took Utah on that one.
But
It's the only one I won.
Your point, Jeff, I think you're right. And this is what's happened over the last couple of years with the recruiting is that we now have quality backups. We don't have just star players that are starting. We've got guys that could be starters on other teams. And so, you play your first half and everybody gets gassed a little bit, and then you come out in the second half and then you can start filtering those backups in there, and they're fresh, especially 100%. Along the D line. And
my most exciting backup to see finally get some playing time was Dante Moore.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he looked real comfortable. He only took 3 passes, but he was 3 for 3. He was only going 5 yards a pass.
15 yards.
But,
hey, whatever. Got
he
some playing
looked
time.
comfortable, and that's what I'd really like to see. Because he never looked comfortable to me at UCLA.
Right.
But I didn't watch all their games. But boy, I'm like, okay, I'm chomping at the bit to see
he
that
looked,
guy play some more.
comfortable. His release on those passes just looked comfortable. I
Yes.
mean, it was just like, no big deal. I'm just going to chuck it out there, and these guys are going to catch it, and away we'll go.
I think the most disappointing game for me was USC going to Michigan and losing. That was terrible. They couldn't stop the run. I mean, you can't tackle at the end of the game, and
Same old USC defense, right?
Yeah.
It's just, they had that game.
they should have won it.
Michigan passed for 22 yards.
Got to stop the run.
Boy, that's kind
Weird.
of familiar.
Yeah, stop the run. Make them beat you in the air. And my gosh, yeah, USC, that was super disappointing. I really thought they were really an up-and-comer, and that's going to set them back. I don't know. Moss had no time to throw the ball. He got drilled numerous times, and that kid is tough. And there were so many whiffs. I thought it was like the Oregon offensive line against Idaho a few weeks ago. And you just saw them. They were stunting, Michigan defense was, and what a great game plan their defensive coach had coming into that game and really just shut them down.
Well, Michigan held on to a lot of their talent last year on the defensive side of the ball. They lost a lot on the offensive side when Harbaugh left. But you knew their defense was going to be good. But to not know or not be able to stop the run, it looked like the Ducks against the Beavers a couple of years ago when we could not stop them in that fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Well, hey guys, Jerry Harris, Brandon Haynes, Jeff Morgan here. Podcast Raining Ducks coming at you. Love our sponsors. We'll get to them in a bit when we come back because we're going to take a break. We're going to do that. We'll be back in a little while right after this.
Let me ask you a question. Do you have knee, hip, back, or shoulder pain? Do you hurt just going up and down stairs or getting in and out of your car? What if I told you there was a solution? One that requires no surgery and no downtime.
I couldn't even run 10 steps, without having pain. Just feel results within days.
Contact us today and find out if regenerative medicine is right for you. This could be the first step towards a new and pain-free you.
Welcome back to Raining Ducks, the podcast of the ages. That's what I'm going to call it.
I like that.
Jerry Harris,
tagline
Brandon
there.
Haynes,
Oh, I lost
me.
the sweet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sweet chair. I'll bring it in. We got that. Oh, man. Hey, want to thank our sponsors again. Capital Nissan right down there on Cherry and Salem Parkway. Actually, Capital just obtained that manufacturer, so I think they've had that for a couple of months now, which is great. Advantage Heating, Air, and Electrical. They've got all your... they pretty much have everything going there. All your HVAC and electrical needs, they're the ones to call. 393-5315. Know that number by heart. I don't know why. Maybe I've called it once too many times because I need them. And who else we got? Green Acres Landscape. Those guys down there at GAA at Home. If you haven't been down there on Gaffin Road to see that phenomenal store that they have there, they got everything there. Furniture. They actually have clothing.
Yep. Really?
Furniture, clothing, pots for outdoors.
Wow.
Yeah, they got it all. It's cool. And
One-stop
some
shop.
fake grass too. They put that in. Do we call it AstroTurf still, or we just call it
Turf.
permanent turf? That's what we call it.
Oh no.
It still has weeds. Have it? Because I have some. It still gets weeds. I don't understand.
My neighbor just got some, and he's talking about it forever. How nice it is not to have the dogs track in mud and stuff. Now I'm thinking, man, I may need to get.
That's not a bad idea, and it doesn't turn yellow from the pee stains.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think. Okay, we're digressing on the podcast. Raining Ducks, by the way. So the Ducks are taking on UCLA. We have another phenomenal kickoff time at 8 p.m. on Saturday night. And gosh, we've got so many late kickoffs. I don't understand because the next game is against Michigan State at home, 6 p.m. Friday night. And then we don't know the Ohio State game, which is the next weekend.
I think it's 4:30.
Did they come out with that?
Yeah.
Well, that's not too bad.
Yeah, no, that one's not bad.
And then what do we have next? We're at Purdue, another Friday night game at 5 o'clock. So it's got to get better because it's going to start getting cold, guys.
You know that Ohio State game, you expect that to be a primetime. That's going to be a big game that weekend.
Huge.
So some of these others, gosh, I remember back when my kids were little and I was trying to take them and shuffle them to sports and going to all their activities and making all the Duck games and Thursdays and Friday nights and geez, it destroyed my golf game, which wasn't very good in the first place. But golly, I hate all of this stuff, and I love it when the big opponents come in because now you're going to get a decent time slot. But all these
Right.
other ones, my goodness.
I
Yeah.
think we can anticipate game day coming to town for that game because that's going to be a big one. Ohio State, they had some trouble in the first half. I can't remember who they were playing, but it was a nobody. Was it Marshall?
I believe
I want to
Yes,
say it
it
was
was
Marshall.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what is going on? I think it was tied at the end of the first quarter. That's weird, but I guess that's not that weird because you play to the level of your opponent, I think, to begin with in a lot of these games. And so no different than Ohio State, maybe no different than LSU last weekend against UCLA, and I'm sure that there's more. But
Well, I'm not convinced that LSU's that good because they lost to USC in Las Vegas. And so, maybe they're just not as good as they're used to be. As we're accustomed to seeing LSU be dominant like they have been, and I just don't know that
LSU
Nussmeyer's their quarterback?
reminds me a lot of Texas A&M, and the fact that they're a very good collection of stars. They're a collection of talent,
But not
but I've
cohesion.
never seen them gel very well. And I always blamed it on what was the coach for Texas A&M?
Oh, Jimbo Fisher.
Jimbo Fisher, yeah.
Yeah.
And Brian Kelly he's never done a whole ton for me. He's a well thought of coach, but
Yeah.
win something and then maybe.
Yeah.
Well, they kind of remind me of how the Ducks played the first 2 games of the season, just a bunch of new guys, and they're not really gelled and cohesive as a unit. So
Good adjustments in the second half. We made good adjustments against the Beavers. We finally saw good adjustments. That's
Yeah.
what that's encouraging too. That, okay, now we saw what our guys were doing. Let's put them in places to be successful. Let's put them in places to stop the other team.
Yeah.
I felt really good about our second half, just from the way the second half was just dominant.
yes, it was.
And I think each week we continue to go, you're seeing Idaho continue to win without their starting quarterback. You're seeing Boise State continue
Boise
to win.
State top 25, just
Boise
moved
State
into 25.
wins this weekend against Washington State. I think that's one of their toughest remaining games, and I think they're probably better than Washington
I
State.
think that's going to make us look really, really well at the end of the season because Boise State, I think they're going to win the Mountain West.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind. That is a good football team.
Yes.
And Ducks keep winning. Boise State keeps winning. That just makes that win that much better, even though we lost you basis points to number 9 after that win. Still shocked me.
I tell you what, I was talking to, I watched a bit of the Beaver game with a buddy of mine, and I was talking, huge Beaver fan, and I was talking to him about how much smaller they looked on defense this year than they had. They lost a lot of guys, when Jonathan Smith left. And when we were going into that Boise State game, we took those stairs on that east end, right? And I was going up that, and right then, that's when Boise State was coming by. And so I stopped at the stairs, and I was watching those guys come in, and I'm like, this doesn't look like a group of 5. I mean, that
big.
was a stout team. I was just
Yeah.
like, my goodness, where they got all these guys?
That's some recruiting right there.
They grow them big in Idaho and
They
Utah,
were
I
huge
guess.
and they were, stout. I was like, my goodness.
Oh.
They looked the part.
Well, they played the part.
Yes, they
Yeah.
did.
And they caused a lot of havoc, and I think they switched things up on their defensive line, and they made it really difficult for our offensive line to know exactly who's going where and who's going to be stunting here. And that was noticeable. I think Dylan was sacked 4 times in that game. So that was an
Yeah.
issue. So really, I think that game really does bode well for the Ducks because it caused them to realize, okay, this is how we need to play. And again, that film that you were talking about, Brandon, that they've been watching, I think that is really key as to how they're playing now and how they're scheming
Yeah.
for the games here in the future.
I think, you just made me think of this. Idaho was really good defensively. I was shocked how good their defensive line was. Boise State, phenomenal defensively. Oregon State is always good defensively.
Yeah.
Brent Bray, the guy knows how to put the defense together, right? They were a little undersized to me. That looked like the smallest of those 3 teams. But playing those guys defensively this early with our issues and stuff, I think that's going to bode well for us down the road when it
Yeah.
comes to some tight games with some tougher teams and stuff.
Well, it just builds resilience and confidence in them that they know they can come back and win the game. I mean, they were down at one point to Boise State, and they came back and did what they needed to do, and I think it's a good character builder for them.
Well, you're watching Raining Ducks, and you're listening to it as well on 1430 KYKN. Jerry Harris, Sweet Jer, Jeff Morgan, Brandon Haynes, bringing it to you live from the KYKN podcast studio. That's where we do this, Raining Ducks podcast. It's a lot of fun, guys. This is cool. It's good to rehash, old games. Beavs, obviously, that was just over a week ago, and now we got UCLA coming up at the Rose Bowl this Saturday. And you can hear our Tailgater show with all 3 of us as well before Jerry Allen, Jorgie, and Joey Mack come on board for the pregame show and the play-by-play for every Duck football game broadcast. So this is a lot of fun. I enjoy talking Ducks and I enjoy talking football in general. It's cool to see, I think the coach that's really surprised me, or the team for that matter, is Miami. I think that Cristobal has done a really good job recruiting. You got Cam Ward, who was the quarterback from Washington State.
Yep.
He threw a pick this last weekend, but these guys are just dominating. You've got Martinez, the ex-running back for the Beavs. I think it's Damian Martinez.
Yes,
I think
Damian,
that's his
yep.
name. But, I think he's like third guy. And I don't know who the 2 other guys are ahead of him, but they've got to be studs. They're just rolling people. So,
And they've got a pretty clear path, I think, to the playoffs.
Oh, heck yeah.
They've got
They
to
don't
beat
play anybody.
Clemson and maybe,
Clemson might be a
Louisville
struggle.
and
I don't know about that.
Did you guys think Cam Ward was making a colossal mistake when he went there? I mean, he's Cristobal's known as a quarterback killer. He stunted Herbert's growth, and then Van Dyke just, I got to get out of town for his senior year because and then Cam Ward goes there and the dude's lighting the world on fire.
Here's the thing with Cristobal that you have to pay attention to. If he gets into a close ball game, they're going to lose. Because he does not know. He's a great recruiter, and I think he's rah-rah guy, and I think the players love him. But when it comes down to the wire, we saw it a few times, when he was coaching for the Ducks against Utah. I mean, shoot. Whittingham just out-coached that guy like no other. And you get down to a good coach like Dabo Sweeney,
yeah.
I'm telling you, that could be an issue for Cristobal.
Absolutely. He's bad at time management in tight games towards the end. The adjustments.
Yeah, you just there's.
Well,
no
I read
rhyme or
somewhere
reason to it.
he's now got a in-game manager to manage the clock for him on the sideline.
Well, that's important for
Whatever
Mario.
it takes, I guess.
Yeah, well, hey, if you need to do that, I mean, if you need, your psychologist out there for you too. I mean, you might as well
I
get
pat
it.
him on the back for doing that, though, because clearly he needed something. Well, hey, let's hire a guy.
I don't know if he was the one that swallowed his pride. I think it probably came down from the top.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, hey guys, we've only got a few more minutes left on the podcast, but any thoughts about the upcoming game against UCLA? Do you have maybe some predictions you think that's going to roll out before we sign off here?
I think it's going to be, because Chip Kelly left. He's now offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Sean Foster is now the coach. Ethan Garbers is the quarterback. He transferred over from Cal, so he's pretty decent. I just, like we were talking about earlier, I just don't think they have the depth to keep up with Oregon.
They haven't put it together yet. Deshaun Foster, did you see him at the media days? worst media. Go look at the podcast of that. Those worst media days ever. And I like Deshaun Foster. Deshaun Foster, I was attending a Duck UCLA game back in the day when he was a stud for UCLA, and I was giving him the business. You got nothing, Foster. I'm up there
You're telling that story.
I'm having a blast.
That's great.
And he turns and he smiles and he points at me and he just laughed. I'm like, I'm a Deshaun Foster fan now.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
But
Jeez.
yeah, it was a long
That's
time
like
ago.
back in the 2005, 6
Hey,
era.
it was just yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. In
I'm
your
still
mind.
young. Sweet Jer is still
That's
young.
right. Sweet Jer.
But I don't think they have it defensively, and their
Mm-hmm.
defense was pretty good last year. Their offense, they get a few pieces, but I don't see them
They're
Well,
not
yeah,
deep
they
enough.
lost
sticking
their
with us at all.
their coordinator that was good. He went over to USC, so I don't.
Yeah, you've
not
got
sure who their
that. Your
coordinator
coach,
is.
your coordinator. I mean, they're gone. I mean, shoot, Chip Kelly at Ohio State. I think they're going to be a force down the road here.
think that was a
eventually
smart
once they
move
figure
for
that
both
thing
of them.
out. Oh heck yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely was. So, well, hey guys, another Raining Ducks podcast coming to a close. It's been great. It's always fun. Let's see here. I want to thank our sponsors once again. I've got Advantage Heating, Air, and Electrical. Appreciate those guys. Capital Nissan, right down there on the Parkway and Cherry Avenue in North Salem, as well as Green Acres Landscape, GA at Home. Can't do it without these guys. Really appreciate it. And Dutch Bros don't have their cups out here right now, but appreciate their sponsorship. And yeah, so guys, enjoy the rest of your evening because
Yeah.
I know that I am.
I think
You had a whole thing. If we had some dead time, I had a whole thing to talk about P Diddy. No.
no. Who?
Well, how long is that going to take? Yeah, we're out.
He's going
No,
to
no,
prison
no.
for
Terrible,
a long time.
Terrible.
Yeah, we can't do that. All right. Thanks for listening. Sweet Jer, Jeff Morgan, Brandon Haynes.
Sweet.
Okay, I'm coming up with a nickname for both of you guys. for next week.
right.
All right, good. Hey, we got to go. Enjoy your evening, everybody. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Go Ducks.